Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all this evening, this late summer that is supposed to be here in the United Kingdom? Although that's sort of always a tricky subject, I have to say. Summer in the UK, not always easy. But in any case, it gives us a reason to have delightful conversations, I have to say, with everybody around us, the weather. And conversations, what an interesting subject. What makes people get on? What makes us get on with one person and not with the other person? Is it merely the art of conversation has died, or is it that we have forgotten how to communicate with people? And especially in this day and age when technology is such a important way to communicate, it seems. Sadly, we have lost the real communication in a lot of ways, and that's the communication of the heart. And that is something that is vitally important. And I have to say that I believe more important than anything, because if you have a connection with somebody, it's on really a far deeper level. And if we can communicate with each other on that deeper level, maybe we can be friends and indeed, who knows what else in life. So it's important to hear all the things that people don't actually say. And that's the secret, I think, that is eternal. With that in mind, I have the absolute pleasure, and I'm really delighted to welcome my guest tonight, who is Nat Schooler. Nat is a best-selling author, an advisor, a podcaster, and an expert in branding. He has been in the branding industry for over 10 years and specialises in coaching entrepreneurs, professionals, executives, and other high achievers. And he has worked with some of the most well-known companies in the world. Nat helps people to find their authentic voice so that they can connect with others on an emotional level while still being professional. Not so easy. He is also a passionate podcaster who has a team of like-minded people who deliver timeless business-focused content that enables people to grow their knowledge and build their brand. Today, and there's so much more to him, I have to say, because he has some amazing stories to share, he will share those and his journey along this long road called life. Welcome, dear Nat.
Thank you. That's lovely, Mimi. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just a bit exhausted, really. I'm trying to put a slide deck together for my publisher because I've got a webinar starting this week that I'm delivering for them. And yeah, and I thought, I'll call my dad and see how he's getting on. And because his Zoom, my brother installed Zoom on he's 88, right? So he's nearly 90 years old, right? So we installed Zoom on his computer. I think this was a couple of days ago, and it all went really well. And I called him up, and he actually answered, and he looked really happy, and it was wonderful. And then yesterday, he's somehow logged out of Zoom. I don't know how, no idea, but he's basically logged himself out so he doesn't show up on there. So today I called him and I'm like, so what's going on, Dad? And we were literally, I don't know what had happened to his machine, but the issues that we face right now with technology and in particular elderly people who perhaps have stepped off of the technology wheel, I'm going to call it, or they've always had someone else to handle it. I mean, my dad always had someone else to handle all of his tech. So, the way that he used to work was someone would do it for him, right? But obviously he's retired now and he finds it very difficult. And But it's particularly frustrating for me because I am unable to see what he sees. So we spend ages looking around these apps on Apple, right? And I have a Windows machine. He has an Apple, right? He's got an iPhone and I've got an iPhone. So at least we have that in common. But then we're trying to solve one problem at a time. So today we're trying to basically get his Mac sorted out so that he can actually read an email, right? So that he can reset his Zoom password. And the biggest issue I find people go through, elderly people in particular, is management of their passwords. This is the biggest issue. I mean, my mum is nearly 80. Going through that today. Very, very difficult situation to get these guys to take care of it themselves, as opposed to trusting a neighbor or someone or family member to look after the passwords, right? And this whole thing is creating a massive marginalized group in society that actually they're so fed up, a lot of them, that they just don't do it, and it causes inactivity, and then it's damaging their lives, because a lot of communications, not all, but a lot of them are online these days. So if you don't get online, you don't talk to your family, you don't talk to your friends as much, so you miss out on all of these things that actually, if these companies really wanted to, they could make a solution for this. It would be one button, push this one button, right? And it would make life super simple. It would be absolutely easy for them to navigate their devices, because it's the biggest issue as well. Navigating a device when you basically are unfamiliar with it is crazy. So you asked me a question, and I'm frankly kind of trying to find a solution for all of these things at the moment.
And do you think, Nat, it is just a certain generation that finds it difficult, or do you think it is pretty much a lot of people out there who don't? I, for one, I have to say, I feel like 100, I have to tell you, on some days, but I find it difficult as well, because I think some people are more open to it. I think you also have to have a certain openness to something, whether that be technology or whatever it is. But how do you do that? Is it a problem for the Western world? Do you think people sort of in Eastern countries have this issue? What's your view on this?
Well, we've got 48% of the world that don't have access to internet at the moment, right? So, I mean, I think there are going to be people in that group who, once they get on the internet, will have no problem. But then there are going to be the elderly people who will never be able to use the internet, and I think there'll be also certain people within certain areas of work, right, that probably never use the internet because they work in certain areas. So I don't know. I can just speak from experience of mastering one's mindset, right? Because my dad and my mum have got to. I mean, my mum's nearly 80, my dad's nearly 90, right? So they're at a point in their lives where actually they could turn around, like a lot of old people who are out there, and say, I'm not doing this. This is a waste of my time. That's a joke, right? But neither of them have that mindset. They both have. I mean, they don't live together anymore, right? But that was years ago. They got divorced when I was 15 years old, right? So they basically, they both have a growth mindset. And it's like my mum, that she doesn't get annoyed about it. She gets a bit frustrated, but she doesn't get annoyed. And I'm like, look, Mum, you're making this harder than it is. This is what I'm saying to her. You're making it harder than it is. This is just simple. But then when you go into the app store, you try and download an app to an iPhone or an iPad or whatever. It is not as simple as it could be for these people. Yeah. Directions need to be clear, right? And this is the issue. Like it says, get it now. And then underneath you push get, it says install. So it's like, look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that you're actually causing people pain. Yeah. My dad, his mindset, I mean, unbelievable. His mindset is fantastic. He went to MIT, yeah. So he taught at MIT. He's a professor. He's got 3 degrees. One of the most intelligent people that I know. He did industrial engineering, right, at university, yeah. As got his MBA and whatever else, right. And he was a professor in long-term business planning and strategy, yeah. So we're talking about 2 very different people, but both of them are actually struggling in similar ways, really. It needs to be simpler. It needs to be easier. And I'm frustrated. I spent a long time with my dad, but it's nice to actually spend time with them. So it isn't, it's not like driving you crazy, but it's just like, but you could be doing other things that are more beneficial. Like you could actually talk to them on Zoom instead of wasting time trying to install it,
And he doesn't have anyone that could do it for him.
My brother did it. He did it 2 days ago, but he lives an hour away, right, from where he is. So, he lives on his own. Yeah. He's nearly 90 and you've got to respect that. Yeah. You've got to respect someone who's nearly 90 years old, lives on his own, looks after himself. Yeah. I have massive respect for my parents. And I think that's something that I didn't perhaps have when I was a kid. I was spoiled when I was a kid. I had everything I wanted, really, except for what was interesting is that my mum and dad, they were a bit older than most of the other parents, right, at school. And my dad, when he was in America, living in America with his, working in his dad's business, they used to have a seat at the opera. They had a box in the New York Opera, right? They had everything that they wanted, right? So he wasn't really interested in cars and fancy stuff and whatever. He just wanted to build a business, and he did a really good job of that. He ran a successful business in the UK. 25 years. We used to create liqueurs, mead, which is honey wine, and fruit wines, basically made from elderflowers and those sorts of things. But they were sold in the historic royal palaces like Kensington Palace and the Tower of London. And we sold our products in the most fantastic places. We used to export to a number of countries. I just have massive respect for my dad, But so when I was younger, I kind of didn't really appreciate things, I don't think, as much as I could have done. The thing is, they were very clever, my parents. They didn't give me everything that I wanted, right? Like a lot of my friends, like they grew up like they had ponies and they had quad bikes and they had everything they wanted, right? But whenever I asked my dad for money, he'd sort of look at me and he'd say, my dad used to always give me half. And then he'd give me what I wanted, but he'd always make me feel like I was taking money out of his pocket. Do you know what I mean? And, but I worked from the age of, I don't know, probably 12, actually. I may have been 10. I don't know. I literally, because we used to make product, right? So we had labeling, we had bottling, we had all sorts of things that, needed to be done in the winery, right, which was next door to my parents' house. My dad basically decided he was going to build a winery on top of my mum's vegetable garden, and that's what he did when I was 6 years old.
So he's a clever guy, your dad.
Yeah, he didn't build it himself. He designed it, right? And he moved a 16th century barn from Billingshurst, which was, I don't know, 18 miles, 20 miles down the road. And then he basically had some builders resurrect this barn over the top of a cellar, which had been filled up with vats, right? So we had, we used to produce a lot of product at that point,
And you did that as part of the family business because you were involved with that, weren't you? First,
Mm-hmm.
That's how. Is that how you got into business? Initially?
Yeah. From my dad's attitude, always thinking big. He always that's something he instilled in me. Just think big, yeah. And And I think this is the biggest problem with people. One of the biggest problems is they don't think big enough. And I was listening to something the other day about it, and they take other people's advice, people who've never been where they want to go, people who just observe and say something perhaps derogatory, and they pick it up, and they accept other people's beliefs. And this is a big problem, is what I've seen in my work,
So I explained a little bit about what you do, because you do so many things. But tell us a little bit about what you actually do in your own words. What is it that you do every day? What is your job? Because there's so many things. There's, and I'll say to the listeners out there, it is really such a huge list of what Nat has done and what he does. It's amazing, really. But tell us a little bit about your life and how it all began.
Well, I was in the wine industry for many years, as I've said, and then basically one day, it all basically went wrong, and I changed careers, and then I moved into selling beer, selling real ale, because I was an expert salesman, like face to face. I could walk into pretty much any potential customer, and I would get them to either agree to buy something or agree to talk to me another time, right? Like it was so easy. Yeah. At that point in my life, it was really, really easy. Yeah. So then I was like, oh, wow, what am I going to do? Right. Because, it was recession, and, I needed to go and find some work on my own. Right. So ended up being unemployed, like, however many people probably are now. I remember I said on another podcast about a year and a half ago about the time when I was, I never forget it. I had a Triumph motorcycle at the time, and I used to live in a little town in Hazelmere. Is what it's called, and it's about half an hour from Guildford if you ride, at a fair pace, right? Maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And so I rode my motorcycle, and I remember I parked it right. It was a beautiful bike. This one, it was a Triumph Daytona T595. It had a 950 cc engine, and it was lovely. It was red, and it just had a race exhaust on it. It was loud. Yeah. So anyway, I rode to Guildford. I parked it right near the job centre, right on the pavement. But the thing is that actually the pavement was like 10 foot wide, and I parked it right against a wall. Yeah. So I went in there, and every time I went to the job centre, I'll never forget it. There was this woman called Rita. I'll never forget her. No, I'll never forget her. Right, Rita. It was so freaking negative. She just oozed negativity. It was unbelievable. And every time I went to see her, I went in with a positive attitude of, I'm going to make it, right? And I'm going to get through this, yeah? And every single time, Rita just slapped me down, yeah? But I carried on my positive attitude. And this one time, I parked my bike outside on next to this wall, came out, and I had a ticket. And this parking attendant had given me a ticket, right? And the ticket was like 60 quid, right? £60. And at that point, this was like 2009, I think. At that point, you were getting, let me see, £35.64 a week. That was how much you had to live on, right? And I just never forget that moment of it. Just put my life into perspective. It was one of those moments that it was like, okay. But then since then, being an entrepreneurial kind of person, working for myself, managing cash is the most difficult thing when you work for yourself, because you get clients that basically take advantage of you in the early days. And they basically, don't pay bills on time. And these problems really come up over and over and over again until you learn how to manage your money properly. And that's a fantastic feeling, fantastic place to kind of be in, right? Where you're self-sufficient. And as far as what I do now, I kind of transition. At that point, I was I basically, so I was out of work, and I was like, right, I need to get some work. So what I did, I went out and had a few beers, and I basically saw this beer, and it was called Alton's Pride. This beer, it was made in Alton, near Alton, in Hampshire, by this amazing microbrewery called Triple F. So at that point, I was like, right, there's none of this beer. Okay, in my local area, not really. There wasn't much of it. So I called up the brewery and I said, "Can I speak to the manager?" Because I was trained in telesales, so I was very good on the phone. And I called up the manager. I said, "Is the manager around?" And then someone said, "Oh, you mean Chris?" I said, "Oh, great. Can I speak to Chris?" And then so I got Chris. I said, "Oh, hi, you're Chris." Blah blah. Speak to the guy on the phone. I said, "Look, I'm not being funny. I love your beer, and I'd love to go and sell it. And I don't see much of it in my area. Do you want to talk about it?" So then I basically, this is a great story. You're going to like this one. So basically he said, "Sure. How about tomorrow? Why don't you come over?" I said, "Great." He said, "Okay, meet me in there's this pub. What was it called? I think it was called, I forget the name of the pub, right? But basically it was at Alton Station, okay, in Hampshire, right? So I remember putting like £4 in the parking meter and paying for a couple hours. And then I was like, right, I'm going to go to that pub and I'm going to go, it's called the Railway Inn. That's it. So I walked into this pub and it's called the Railway Inn. And it had just opened. So I walked in and there were no people. So I kind of looked around. I'm like, well, he's not here. And I'm bang on time. And like, where is he? So I kind of stood around, which, when you're standing around and you're feeling a bit out of place, it feels like hours, doesn't it? Like 30 seconds just feels like 2 hours, right? So I stood there, and then this girl came out, this barmaid came out. I said, "Is Chris around?" She sort of looked at me like I was really weird, yeah. And I was like, "Chris, he's not around?" And she looked at me again like I was really weird. And that moment went on for like what felt like hours as well. And then this chap walked out from behind the bar, and I said, "You don't know a Chris?" And he looked at me like I was weird again. And I'm like, and then they looked at me and they went, and I said, "Is this the Railway Inn?" And I looked at them and they looked at me and they said, yeah, you must mean the one across the street." And there were two pubs with the same name, seriously, right? Can you believe it?
I was waiting for the punchline, Nat.
That was it. They were two pubs with the same name. And this was the one that was completely dead out of the two. The other one was slap bang opposite on the other side of the street.
Right.
Right? Unbelievable. So
I thought it was a joke.
No, I'm totally serious. This is what happened to me, right? So I walk in the other pub, right? And it's busy and there are loads of people around and they're all drinking beer and everyone's really happy. And I was like, "You Chris?" He went, yeah. I went in the other pub. They don't have a Chris in there. And I just looked at him and he looked at me. He went, "Do you want a beer?" And I went, "Yeah, that'd be good." And we stood around for kind of half hour, an hour having this beer. And he said, "Right, okay, great. Yeah, you want to sell the beer? Super. You work on 10% commission and we'll talk about it once you made your first sales." And I was like, "Okay, great." So I just shook his hand, went out, got into my, at the time, she was my girlfriend. We hadn't got married by that point. So got into her little old BMW, and I basically drove to this pub, which was on the way home. And I walked in and I said, I popped in the door and I said, "I'm just wondering, do you want any beer? I just got a new job." And the guy goes, "Oh, what brewery is that?" I said, "Oh, Triple F." He said, "Oh, brilliant. I would love some beer. I need it today though." Right. So I was like, so I called the brewery up. This is within an hour of speaking with Chris. I said, "Oh, hi. Just got an order there. I'm at the Black Fox, and Alan, he wants 3 casks of beer. Can you get it to him today?" and then I said, "Oh, we need to talk about my wages. I'll speak to you soon." And then literally went in and negotiated a basic salary within 24 hours. And that was my first move after I'd sort of transitioning into working for myself, really.
Wow, what a story.
It was crazy. Yeah, but the problem, in the drinks industry is you get free booze.
And did that have an effect on you?
Well, you get fat, Mimi.
I don't know. I don't drink.
But it's good that you don't, because really, literally, I used to go. They had a room full of casks, okay, which was for the off sales. So people would come into the brewery shop, and then they would fill up these, 2 pint, 4 pint, 6 pint, 16 pint, 32 pint containers, and then they, pay £1 a pint or whatever it was, and go and get drunk, right? The problem was, I would get this beer for free. And then the owner of the company, who was also a brewer and he loved the beer, was like, well, you've only got 2 pints. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a few more. He's like, well, have 4 of that and have 4 of this. And then so by the end of it, you basically go home every night with so much beer. You don't drink it every night, but like you end up giving people beer everywhere you go. You're like, do you want a beer? And you just... And that was my sales technique. I took my sales technique from the winery, which is what I used to do, turn up with samples. And I did the same thing with that beer. And one day I basically was in a bar, very big chain in the UK. I think they're actually the largest. They might not be now, but at that time they were the largest independent chain, basically. And what happened was I basically managed to get the buyer's number, right, and his email address. And so I literally sent the buyer of this chain a message saying, I'd like to sell you some beer. Can we have a meeting? And then I turned up at his office, and I never forget this, one of the biggest lessons in sales: never ask this question. Yeah. He basically sat me down, and I said, I brought some beer for you. And I gave him this beer. I remember, because I left at like 6 o'clock in the morning to go and drive there and take him this beer and have a meeting. And he said, what did he say? He said something, we were talking about the price. And I asked him, I said, so how much do you want to pay for this beer? And he just looked at me and he said, well, I think we should start at nothing then, really. And I just felt so small. It was awful. But then actually he became a really cool, really big advocate of mine. Basically, he got me listed into all of the chain. So we basically could sell as much beer as we wanted to. It was crazy.
And how long did you do that for, Nat?
That was probably about a year. At the same time, I was pruning a vineyard that I was kind of renting. I was in the process of renting it, and I was thinking about renting it and having a shop there and everything else, but then basically just worked out that it wasn't really for me. And so I was kind of doing both of those things, and then I went off to Belize to get married, and then basically ended up seeing all of these Miss Central Americas at the airport. That was crazy. It was crazy. Seriously.
Why did you go to Belize? Do we dare ask that question?
It's one of my favorite countries.
Okay.
It's just a wonderful country. It really is. It's very British in the way that people behave, quite British, because obviously it was a British colony, and we still have a lot of respect from the Belizeans, because we made a lot of roads there. We basically, I think we still actually defend the country against Guatemala and other countries around there, because we still do jungle warfare training there. But basically, I mean, it borders the Caribbean Ocean. You've got rainforest, you've got howler monkeys, you've got temples, you've got rivers you can swim in, and tropical fruits, and Caribbean islands, and you've got rum.
And you've got rum.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear Belize, I always think of some, I don't know, some far-flung country that you get kidnapped and you never come back again. So that's why I'm curious, is why, you have this sort of love affair with the country.
It is a bit raw. It is a bit like the Wild West. I'm not going to lie.
Mm. But you love it anyway.
I love it. I mean, I went back there, and I have a kung fu teacher in Guatemala City. So a world expert in Tai Chi as a martial art. He's my teacher. He's a Chinese guy. Moved there. I don't know, 1980s probably. And he's basically my teacher. So every so often I will go and I will visit him. And I went back to Belize to pick up my wedding certificate when I wanted a divorce. But we'll have to talk about that in another episode, maybe. That's right. A funny story, that.
And that sounds an interesting story.
It's a good one. That could be a whole episode, that, I reckon. So literally when I came back from my honeymoon, 5 weeks, right? These guys had worked out that actually they didn't really need me anymore because they pretty much maxed out capacity. And they were like, well, we don't really need you anymore. I was like, okay, cool. And like, he paid me, I think they paid me like a nice chunk of change. Like it wasn't small. Yeah. It was, it was 5 times the amount you would expect from a self-employed job that basically, it was a lot of money. Yeah. At that time. So then I managed to get approached by someone on LinkedIn who was a drinks branding company. Right. So these guys did the rebrand for Luxardo, Sambuca. They worked in drinks branding like their whole careers. They're absolute experts in package design, brand design, branding, and that's when I started my education into branding. Really, from there, because when I arrived, I didn't really know huge amounts about marketing, didn't know about branding, but I knew about sales, right? So the first thing I was given was a book on Johnny Walker. And the Johnny Walker brand was where I started to learn about branding, actual business branding. And a few years later, I sort of learned about personal branding. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a really cool job. When I never forget it, right? The guy's like, yeah, come and have a meeting. So at that time, like tweed jackets were really cool. Yeah. Everyone was into like blue jeans, brogues, tweed jackets, striped shirts. That was the kind of look. Yeah. For the sort of marketing, advertising kind of industry and that kind of thing. So I donned my tweed jacket. Jumped on the train from Hazelmere. I lived right near the station. Yeah. So literally to walk home, it's like 5 minutes from the station, right? So I get to this really cool office in North London and meet Eddie, who's he's the boss. And then there are a couple other guys who are his partners and whatever. And we just got on like a house on fire, right? Just super cool guy. And he's like, oh, we're going to the pub. Do you want to go and grab some beers and have some lunch? I was like, sure, great. And then literally me and these three creatives just sat about in one of the best real ale pubs in North London and just got drunk. Like it was crazy. It was like a sort of interview out of a Carlsberg advert. It was crazy. And we just sat about and drunk probably 4 or 5 beers each and just had a really good time getting to know each other. And then he's like, yeah, when do you want to start? And I was like, well, he's like, send me a proposal. So I was like, sure, send him a proposal. And then basically, so at that point, I was working for them. I got another job 2 days a week for another brewery selling beer because I posted an advert on a website about beer sales. Right. I was teaching Tai Chi classes, and I think my daughter had just been born. Right, so I was basically working like 3 or 4 jobs. My wife was kind of working. Probably, I think she was working maybe 30 hours a week as well. So it was a pretty crazy time in my life, actually. But I have really fond memories of that time. It was super.
Now, tell me about the Tai Chi and how you got into that, because that's a very different lifestyle to the one that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. So when I went to college, I basically studied. I studied at a college near Brighton called Plumpton College, and at that time they launched the first ever wine studies HND course. So that was marketing, grape growing, wine making, blah blah blah. Yeah. At that point, I basically stayed at college for a year, and there was a night warden there called Ian. And he was basically, he'd been on like the British team for Tai Chi. He'd basically had like a black belt in karate and judo, and he was into like Viking fighting and stuff. And we just became friends. And he was my first teacher. That was when I was 20. I was 20. Yeah. So that was 25 years ago now. And basically, I just continued it. It was just something that I just continued to do day after day, month after month, year after year. And I just found that it just gave me a lot more energy, a lot more focus to everything else in my life. It helped me give up certain bad habits. And you know, and I practice pretty much every day at the moment. I have done for 25 years. You know, saying that it is you know, an opposite way of life to the sort of drinking and this kind of thing isn't strictly true, because if you go back to like the Taoist writings, you will see that, you know, there are poems that basically go back to the Taoists that live in the mountains. And like one of them will say, I get up at dawn, I walk through the woods, I gather firewood on my back, I sell the firewood and I buy wine, and then I end up at home again. You know, there are these kind of things. So I don't actually believe that at all.
What do you think about traditional wisdom? Is that something that is a part of your life, would you say? Because how you come across is as a very wise person, I have to say.
Thank you.
So there seems to be a much deeper depth to you on many levels, I think. And it's something that you and I spoke about before. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you would like to share it, but it's something that I think the listeners would benefit from.
Yeah. I don't know about wise. I think probably learnt the hard way in many cases. I think that in life, lessons seem to come up again and again and again and again. And until you actually take the lesson for what it is and say, okay, I've learned it this time, I don't want to go through this again, I'm going to change, right? Then they keep coming back and coming back and biting you until you actually listen and take it on board, you know. And I don't know, I spent many years of my life, you know, basically just being quite selfish, not really caring that much about others. All right, I cared, but not really, not like I do now. And like I just had like a massive change in my life. I had a massive sort of turning point, which was basically I moved. So I'll tell you the story. I moved to Spain, and at that point in my life, I basically rented a villa. I drove out there in my Jeep, and I rented a villa for like a year. Basically spent a lot of money, ended up, I got some work from IBM, and I, you know, I thought things were going really well. And then basically they stopped the program, and I didn't really have anything to fall back on. So I kind of ended up back in England. And I had a really weird experience. So I was basically sleeping on a in the ferry after parking my car, drunk some wine, and basically fell asleep. And I basically at one point I sort of woke up and I looked over my shoulder and I saw I saw a figure of Jesus, like he looked about 9 foot tall to me at that time. It was just, he looked so huge. He was such a huge character that it was just, and it frightened me absolutely silly, frightened me to death, half to death. So I turned my back on him. I said, look, I can't cope with this now. Please don't frighten me. I can't deal with this. So I went to sleep, woke up, got in my Jeep, didn't think any more about it for, I don't know, probably a couple months, maybe a month and a half. And then one day, so I was dating this chick at the time. She had a couple kids, lovely person, great kids as well. And basically one day I basically broke the door lock to her house, right? Locked the back door, which you never do on Dartmoor in the moors. And I basically, we were all outside. I had nothing on me. My mobile phone was inside, and she's like, well, okay. She was mad. I mean, she was funny. I still kind of like her, but that's a long story. She was a black belt in full contact karate, kickboxing, combat jiu-jitsu, and an instructor as well. But she's also an electrotherapist.
Well,
Isn't that a crazy?
That's quite a combination.
Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. But she went mad. She went totally freaking crazy, yeah. And she basically just threw me a 1.5 litre bottle of water. She said,
she was mad because of that you'd broken the lock. She was mad.
I broke the lock, yeah. So okay. We couldn't get back in, right? So she's basically, this is a bank holiday or a Sunday or whatever. So I've got no telephone. I've got no money on me. All I've got is a bottle of water. I've got a very thin jacket, which thankfully I had, or I would have been freezing. And basically, I've got a little sports car, right, that you could not sleep in if you tried, yeah. And she said, "Oh, I've called a locksmith. Here's my neighbour's mobile phone. You can call someone. You need to sort it out and get the money for when he gets here, right?" So I'm just like, so she's thrown this phone at me, thrown me the water, and gone, "Oh, and if we're not back, you can sleep in your car." Right? Can you believe that? It was crazy. So literally, I went out onto Dartmoor, yeah, onto the moors, and I sat
in the night.
No, it was still daytime at this point.
Oh, it was still daytime.
Yeah. And it wasn't too cold. The sun was out, and I was broken at this point. It was just the last straw for me. I was just like, so I sat down, crossed my legs, and sat down on Dartmoor, and I spoke to God, and I said, I prayed to God, and I said, "Look, Jesus, God, help me. Like, I'm really sorry. I can't take it anymore. Like, these things keep happening to me. Like, I can't cope with this anymore." And I heard these words in my head saying, "You are deeply selfish, and unless you change, this is going to keep happening to you."
Oh,
right. So at that point, I was literally just broken, yeah. And I basically just gave up. I said, "Look, I can't do this anymore. Help me to get better, like to reform and become a better person." And that was the moment when my heart just started to kind of soften, and I started to develop like compassion for people and real empathy, and really care about what on earth is going on in society, and like in Africa and in wherever in the world, right? And I could actually really empathize and be compassionate and just kind of understand more about what it's like to really suffer, yeah. Like, and I actually think suffering in that respect, for me, I'm not talking about other people, it's not my place, right? But that was really good for me, because it made me realize that, like, I didn't even know anyone's phone numbers, right? I didn't even know my mum's number. I was totally lost. My iPhone was in her house, right? Like, so anyway, that was the beginning of my change. It was like a total transformation, yeah. And then I basically just followed guidance from the man upstairs who told me to start a podcast show, right? I mean, I'd already had one with a business partner, but that wasn't going anywhere. So one day I basically heard these words in my head saying, start a podcast show, right? So at first I was like, oh, really? Do I have to start another one? Yes, you must start a podcast. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. So I dug out. I created a website. I dug out a podcast episode where I'd interviewed someone who basically turned out to be one of the most amazing mentors, who spent a little bit of time with me. He helped me to get Stanley Tucci on my show, and like loads of OBEs and MBEs, and basically transformed my whole mentality through doing a few interviews with these people. Like, it was crazy. And so I started this show, and I put this one episode on the website, and I put my feet up, and I was like, oh, that's all right, I can relax now. And then I heard these words again saying, no, you can't. You're not working hard enough. You need to work really hard. You need to work so hard that this really works for you. And so I did. And I created, this is in the run up to 2018, Christmas 2018. In October 2018, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do it. So I basically created that first episode. Then in November, I heard the words saying, you're not working hard enough. So I started really working hard, and I created 6 episodes with full transcription credits, which were between 9 and 15,000 words per episode. Obviously editing the audio myself, editing the transcriptions, which admittedly wasn't a great job. I kind of did it, not probably too well. If I went back and looked, I could probably find a lot of errors, but I managed to do it. And I got 6 episodes live before Christmas 2018. So then I went to see my dad, and I heard these words in my head saying, you can have 3 days off, and that's it. And you need to do another 6 episodes. As soon as you're back in January, you need to keep the pace up. Yeah. So I was like, oh, you're kidding me. No way. And all right, I'll do it. Yeah. Because you hear these words in your head that tell you you've got to do something. You need to take that advice, and you need to do it, because if you don't, you're going to continue with the life that you don't want. Right. So I took the advice, and I created the 6, and I released them for that week as soon as we got back in January 2019. And then after the 3rd, or on the Wednesday, I had a message from the world's largest ebook publishing firm that has now grown to 120 employees now since I've been working with them, from 60 or something. Their customers are like KPMG, Lidl, banks, pharmaceuticals, engineering firms, and they're moving into China with their content and stuff. So I was like, I basically thought I would make a hell of a lot of money, right? Yeah. And she turned around and she said, well, look, we can't pay you any money, but you get paid for life of the content. So I was like, okay, that sounds great. How does that work? So she basically said to me, well, this is what we expect you'll make, and if you do this amount of episodes, you're going to make X. So in my mind, I was like, well, 1 episode really didn't make me very excited. So I had this inspiration. I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll do 100 episodes for you by the end of within 3 months, right? So I went away, and I interviewed everyone that I could get my hands on. I was like, right, what are the topics? They sent me 100. They sent me like 200 topics. I basically did 100 out of these topics. And that now pays for me to live. So it's taken a lot of pressure away from now my entrepreneurial activities, which has given me the freedom to actually sit back and say, well, I've cut my living expenses to as low as I can, which is the most important thing if you want to work for yourself in self-employed business. If you're spending money like water, then just keep working and stay in your job is my advice. But the moment you cut your overheads to bare minimum and you get the money which covers them, it frees up your creative brain. So then you can actually create things. So about a year ago, jump forward a little bit. I've got these podcasts. I've interviewed, some of the top people in the world, like actors, the founders of the Windows Insider program, like the coolest people ever. Yeah. Loads of OBEs, MBEs. And then my business partner who I was working with, unfortunately, ended up in hospital having a stroke. And then I was like, well, by that point, I'd kind of already agreed to start a business with someone. And I'd hoped he would be a part of that, but unfortunately, he had this stroke and wasn't able to help or do anything like from January, right? So before that point, I'd already started work on this new brand and all of these new things, and so for about a year now, I've been basically working with one of the most amazing executive coaches and CEOs in the world, right? So, we're in the process of building an online learning, education business. And so, but it's like each one of these steps, each thing that caused me pain kind of pushed me into the place where I'm at now, which is actually I've got most of the knowledge that I need to, and I've certainly got most of the connections that I need, because I kind of got to the point where I was like, I can't do it on my own. Like, and I think that a lot of people, they fail because they actually think they can do it all on their own. And they it's almost like you've got blinkers on. It's like, no, I'm going to grow a business on my own. It's like, you can't. Like, most of the time, you could, but a lot of the successful people that I know, they've all got business partners or great people who they employ, right?
Yeah, it's very true. And where are you now in life?
In life,
so to speak. Yeah.
I'm rebuilding. I got divorced, like I say. I think that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago when I finally got the courage to take it all, get it all sorted and get the right paperwork in place and all that kind of stuff, right? So, I'm just rebuilding my life. And I've kind of, right now I've got very cheap overheads. The weather's nice where I am here in Croatia. And, I'm resident here now for 5 years. I've got a 5-year visa permit, whatever. I'm going to buy a house in the next couple of years, but I have to work really, really hard in order to do that, right?
And the moment where you had that divine intervention, I suppose, Nat, is that something that has changed the complete direction of your life? Is that something that guides you every day now?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, just with my mindset and actually there are many, many ways, right? But I certainly think that the good book, yeah, if it is understood and someone explains the good book, right, and what that particular lesson means, it contains everything that you really need, right? Because if you worry about things and you might lack faith, you might be angry or not care about people. There are so many lessons in the good book, right? And I take guidance like every day, right? Multiple times a day, right? And I just feel that it's turbocharged my whole life, right? Because, what Kim and I are doing with our business, it will change a lot of lives, right? And that's important. Yeah. And, and that's why I basically continue with, posting content every day, writing, well, nearly every day, writing blogs, trying to encourage people, trying to give people the belief that they can look right. If I can do it, right, I've got like 2 GCSEs. Yeah, I had an English teacher at school who used to tell me I'd be cleaning toilets. Right, okay. He used to bully me in every class and tell me that. Yeah, but the guy, his lessons were boring. Right, like, you know, I got expelled from one of the top boarding schools in the UK. My parents nearly wanted to kill me. I did absolutely nothing really at school because it was just boring, right? I just found it absolutely dull, right? But the thing is that, you know, some of the most successful people that I know, including my business partner, she doesn't have a degree, right? One of my mentors, Michael Tobin, OBE, he doesn't have a degree. He grew a business and merged 2 cloud companies together and sold it for like $3.3 billion or something. Like, and it's like, wherever you're at, you've just got to start with something that is interesting to you. Like, I don't care what it is. If you think, right, I like the look of this looks really interesting, then you need to learn about it, and you need to learn everything you can possibly understand and comprehend about that subject. And if you do that, that's going to take you to the next stage, right? Because you don't actually know what the big picture is. Yeah. If you turned around to Mimi and you said, Mimi, say we went back 10 years, Mimi, or 15 years, right? And I said, young Mimi, younger Mimi, what do you think you're going to be doing in 15 years' time? You wouldn't even have any idea.
I'm maybe not the best person for that.
Oh, really? Maybe you would. All right.
No, I wouldn't know, because I'm definitely... No, I wouldn't know. But that is only because we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what life brings to us and who life brings to us. This is the thing. And I think there has to be an air of mystery about it, and an air of allowing the right people and the right situations into your life.
Yeah.
And I listened to your story, Nat, and I think, but you sound confident. And is that something that you have always had, or is that something that you have to work towards every day? Because that's really important, because so many people out there don't have that confidence in themselves to achieve what is really their life purpose.
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer, actually. I think some days are better than others. I think some days you can be delusionary into thinking that you're amazing at things, and actually you fail miserably. Other days you can be really thinking that you're really bad at something and be really good at it, right? But what I do think is that becoming really good at something, it takes practice, it takes work, right? Like, and you know, when I do my TEDx, or whatever, TED Talk, whatever, right, my message will be, look, stop listening to these idiots, who are trying to tell you that you should buy more of their stupid books that are going to sow the seed of some like wacky download of like every dream you've ever had becoming reality. You need to get off your ass and do some work, right? And I don't care what that is. It needs to be something, and it doesn't matter where you are, right? If you want inspiration, go and look at the film on Netflix with the African boy who basically created electricity from and created a water well in his village, right? Like, you know, it's like Michael Tobin, like he had a really bad childhood, and I think a lot of people, that pain is there to teach you something. Everything that you go through is there to teach you something, right? Everything, and it might not be apparent at the time. Like you might look back at, you might be in the moment and go, whoa, this is awful, like, right? And you know, we've all been there, but the thing is that you take that experience with you, and you end up one day and you say, all right, I made that mistake. Okay, that was a mistake I made. Okay, sure. But you know what? I can do this. And it all depends on what you're trying to do. If what you're doing is causing you pain and you really hate what you're doing, you've got to find something else to do with your time, right? Like, just try and cultivate some other interests that may turn into work, right? But nothing's easy. People like you to believe it is, but it's not easy. Everyone has to work hard. Like, the processes that I'm going through right now, just to create a newsletter, right, were killing me today. I'm trying to create a newsletter. I did it in the end, thank God. It wasn't easy. I'd never done it with this particular tool, and it isn't that easy. And then, there are all these things that you need to learn. And you know what? Everyone goes through this. Like, just because you think you're special, right? You're not special. You're normal. And you need to just get up one more time, right? Like, I think there's a Japanese saying. My friend Nicholas Babin was talking about it the other day on an interview. He's actually now a world expert on AI for the WEF. Fantastic chap in France, a friend of mine. And he said the Japanese have a saying that you fall down 6 times and you get up number 7.
Yeah, that's good advice. But I have to say, I actually do believe that we are special.
I do.
I do believe that every single person has a particular quality that the other one doesn't. And I think we forget that. I think we forget our quality, because I think innately, even as children, we know that quality. Mm-hmm. We forget that quality. When we forget our quality, it's very difficult then to see somebody else's.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to remember that we are unique and we are special mm-hmm. as beings in our own right. And as I'm talking to you now, what is inspiring me really, Nat, is that you were able to change your life to something positive, and that is with something that is, it's not outside of us, of course, but it's something that is, you can't see with the eyes. The divine you cannot see sometimes with the eyes, although the whole world is divine, including ourselves. But I'm interested in, you talk a lot about mindset. You're an expert in all of this, but tell me something about the heart. Because ultimately, unless we have this passion within our hearts, life is tasteless, surely.
Yeah. I mean, I think at certain times in our lives, like you're really talking about purpose, because we're not talking about love as in, relationship love. We're talking about purpose is what we're really talking about. Yeah. So when it comes to purpose, yeah, we can spend all this time. I found it a very interesting journey. Yeah. And what you will find is when you discover your purpose, that it was always there in the first place. And that is a very interesting thing. Yeah. Because you can run away from it, but then eventually, if you decide to take your mission, right, that purpose that you have is just there, and you pick it up and you run with it. And when you pick up your purpose and you run with it, right, it is like I'm not going to say the universe. Let's say the universe, right? It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. Let's just say that the heavens opened. Yeah. And basically everything that you need to make that happen is in front of you. Right. And, I was invited to go to IBM Think, which is because I'm part of this IBM futurist community still. And I think they kind of, I'm not sure what they're doing with the program anymore, but it was a program around top thinkers around AI, cloud, marketing in the world, right? So somehow I kind of started thinking about AI and, and jobs and this and that. And I started blogging about it. And then, IBM were like, oh, we want you to come to Think. So I went to Think, and it was crazy, right? Like I literally, I met the most amazing people. Some of them are friends of mine now, right? Like literally. And one of them is called Brian Eisenberg, and he's like a 5 times New York best-selling author, one of the coolest people that you will meet, right? And at the time, he had written a book called, well, at the time it was called, I think he changed the name. It's called Be Like Amazon now. It was Brand Like Amazon. So I've got a signed copy here. And it's a very interesting story when there's an old man in the car, and he takes a road trip with a younger guy and basically shares all of these amazing insights, right? But what I love about in the back of the book, the way that you basically write down your I believe statements, right? And when you write down your I believe statements, it's almost like it gives you some sort of turbo to what, like it gives you more power to deliver what you're going to deliver to the world, right? So I read that book, and I read Simon Sinek's book, Your Why, right? I also read a book by Britain's leading hypnotist, Jonathan Chase, which was a fantastic book. And that really helped me as well. And I'll give you all the links if you want to put them into the show, right? Somewhere.
Okay.
But basically, all of these books really helped me, because the first book from Jonathan Chase was like, it's basically all about creating your perfect day. And basically, he outlines a process in there, which basically you go through and you create your perfect day, which basically it becomes harmonious with your subconscious mind. And this is what's important. This is why we struggle in many cases, because our subconscious mind is fighting against our conscious mind, right? And this is something that I've been learning a lot about, right? It's not the opposite of Christianity. It's not the opposite of whatever faith you believe. It's a fact, yeah, that when we were growing up, I was growing up, people were like, oh, well, you only use 5% of your brain. It's like, and at that point, I didn't really question it, right? But that's rubbish, yeah? Because we are always creating. Our brain is always creating, even while we're sleeping, right? Even while we're taking a nap, yeah? Our brain is always creating, right? So I went through this process, the perfect day process, and then I basically combined it with, I read Simon Sinek's book and thought about my why, and I read that. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I read Be Like Amazon again, and I was like, so I'm going to create these I believe statements, right? So I wrote a whole load of statements down, yeah, and I created like this document, which basically is like my perfect day. But at the end of it, it says, well, this is what I believe. Like, I believe everyone needs to have internet access. I believe everybody deserves to eat food and have drink and have shelter. And all of these things, and those things have turbocharged my purpose and my life, which is to educate people so that they can provide for themselves, right?
And provide what for themselves?
Everything that they need.
For example?
Well, food, shelter, water, access to education, access to money, access to job that they actually enjoy or work, meaningful work. All of these things are really important, yeah? And, with the invention of new technologies, jobs are disappearing, but also jobs are growing, right? So, being able to turn around and go, well, I've got to change my mindset, otherwise I'm going to be unemployed, right? You need to do it. You need to change your mindset. I'm not saying that if you are a yoga teacher or if you're an expert in woodsmanship or craft, that you have to learn about the internet. But what I'm saying is that if you feel that you want to learn about technology and move into that sort of space, you need to take a look at what jobs are going to be around, what jobs are not going to be around, and create value, right? Because this is what it's about. It's about creating value. If you're not creating value, then you're gonna have a problem, aren't you?
Okay, let's take this example. What if technology finishes tomorrow? Is that the end of mankind? Or is that the beginning of something different, another world?
If that happens, everyone's going to die.
You believe that?
Absolutely.
Even with your faith in Jesus and God?
Yeah,
you believe?
absolutely. Technology, why? I don't know why you would say that.
Because I'm looking at everything in the world, personally speaking, now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to people. I'm listening to clients. I'm listening to colleagues, my peers, friends, family. I'm looking at it on a wider scale. And I hear all these stories and I hear people. And, as you know, the work that I do in therapy and everything. And we were talking about this before. And one of the things that really, I would say 85% of the people that I talk to, Nat, actually don't like the way the world is going with technology. And they feel somewhat trapped with it. And I often get the question myself, what would you do? Who would you be if technology ceased? Now, that's why I'm asking you this question, because it's been coming up a lot.
So you're asking, what would I do?
Yeah, what would you do as a person?
I'd just grow grapes.
So we wouldn't die. You wouldn't die.
No, but I wouldn't die. But if you think about the way that things work, right, there would be so many bad things that happen if there was no technology. So many. Like all the advances that we're making in medical, healthcare, there are so many good things that technology has brought that I think it would be dreadful if that happened. Think about how many people that wouldn't be able to speak to their families, who wouldn't be able to read articles, who wouldn't be able to get education. Like MIT gave away open courseware 20 years ago. That was the first time. They just had the 20th anniversary, right? So they've basically they've delivered millions and millions of courses to people for free on the internet, right? So yes, it would be awful, dreadful.
But let me stop you just for a moment. The experience that you had on the boat, I believe it was, and on the moors, had nothing to do with technology. It was something beyond our understanding, in a way. That was so profound to you that it made you turn your life around. So how do you explain that? Do you not think that power that did that on those two occasions could not transform the world in a better way?
I don't actually see how it would be possible to first of all educate all of these people that are uneducated, who don't have access to anything without technology. It's not possible. Yeah.
So, how was it possible before we were so advanced in technology?
Well, they weren't getting educated.
But people were still living, weren't they?
But they were living, but were they living? That's the point, right?
Well, that's the big question.
Well, it depends. It depends on what you enjoy in life, right? I'm not saying you have to use your technology, but what I am saying is that actually it's people's freedom of choice. Yeah, it's freedom of choice, right? If you decide that you want to build a business and then you want to retire and you want to go and run a vineyard, that's fine. But you're still going to use technology. Technology is the solution for all of these things that are going wrong, right? And it's just like the jack in a box, right? It's out of the box, right? Like it's already happened. Yeah. If you think about how technology is, you've got Internet of Things sensors that are sensing, motors and telling engineers when they're going to go wrong. You've got so many great things, right, from technology. But the issue I have, the main issue that I have is actually when we got the Industrial Revolution, the first one, right? I don't see us having any more revolutions. I think that we're still part of the first Industrial Revolution to me. I think all of these people saying we're 2.0, 3.0 is a lot of rubbish, right? What happened is we were promised, less work and more money, right? This is what we were promised, and that's what we need. If we can actually begin to use the technology in the right way, instead of just creating more and more output, which is basically what's happening at the moment, we're basically getting all this new tech, learning how to use it, creating more output, right? And then making probably the same or more money, but we're not getting any time back, right? So just because someone chooses, I'm saying choose in a loose word, chooses to waste their time on this app and that app and this app and whatever, and not do something else, that is actually their choice. But the problem is that they are not aware of that choice. Yeah, they are not aware that those endorphins, that those triggers are being pushed in their head, which makes them addicted to that app, right? So they don't know how to actually not use that app or use it in a way whereby they're in control of it, right? That's not my job to educate them as to that point, yeah? Perhaps it is, but the point I'm making is that actually we want less work, more money, right? We want to work, but we want less work. That's why we have machines, right? Machines need to take some of the work so we can have more time. And this is something that I have a massive problem with. And that's what I think needs to be fixed. If this isn't fixed, then what's the point of all this technology? It's pointless, Mimi, right? You know?
Where has the peace gone in people, Nat? Because when you look around, everyone is busy being busy.
I don't know. I'm in Croatia, right? This is like the early 1990s. People are really happy here. Yeah, most of them, they don't earn as much money as people in the UK and whatever, but they're really happy here. Like England is UK's got a lot of people there. People are busy. But it's like they wear it as a badge of honor. Yeah. I'm not wearing my busyness as a badge of honor. I'm actually working. Towards something so that I don't have to work. Yeah. Or I can work 20 hours a week if I want, or I can work no hours a week. Right. That's what I'm working towards. Yeah. Just because other people aren't working in that way and they're just like, well, I'm going to work for 30 years and I'm going to get a pension and then I'm going to retire and I'll be happy when. Like, yeah, you can be happy when, right? Fine. Good for them. Yeah. That's their choice as to how they want to live. I don't want to live like that. I never have. Right. So, it's horses for courses. You make your decisions. You're the one that's got to look at yourself in the mirror, right? Like that's it really. I can't judge someone based upon my attitude. It's not up to me, right? It's up to them. Yeah. I'm not into judging people. I think that that's their choice, but they need to make an informed choice. It's informed choices. It isn't, blindly continuing down a road without knowing what you're going to get. It's about goal setting, and it's conscious goal setting and aiming in the right direction for what you want your life to look like, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, yeah? Really.
And when you are working less, Nat, for example, what would be your ideal scenario? What would you like to be doing in your free time?
Riding motorcycles, sailing, traveling a bit, eating nice food, maybe have a vineyard, small one, to do a little bit of work on, spending time with family, friends. That's kind of it, really.
The simple pleasures of life.
Yeah, and exercising, yeah.
Yeah. Don't forget exercise, of course. Oh dear.
Well,
really,
Mimi, look, it's been a real pleasure.
It has indeed.
I'm going to have to go because I need to get up and finish up this personal branding presentation.
Thank you very much, Nat, for coming on.
Thank you.
And where can people find out more about what you do?
natschooler.com.
Okay. And all the information is there. And before you run off, it's something that I do with all my guests, a couple of lines of inspiration for people out there listening, something that really can help people in these times.
Well, I was in the bath, right? And at the time I had this massive corner bath, and I was kind of meditating, I think, right? Because I was tired, and I heard these words in my head, and it was listen more, do more, and be more. And those are the 3 ways to success. That was what I heard in my head.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. We should put that on the wall and look at it every day.
Well, I'm trying to listen, Mimi. It's not easy at times.
It's not, but we must try.
Normally I'm asking the questions, so for me it's kind of a bit unnerving.
No, I cannot believe that for 1 second. Come on. Give my regards to beautiful Croatia, and please come again.
Thank you, Mimi. I really appreciate it. Very much so.
Okay, take care, Nat.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nat Schooler. What an interesting conversation. It's always good to hear other people's opinions because we have so much to learn from each other. Until next time, take care and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.